Hey, and welcome to the Mind Body Warrior channel. This is Sifu Matthias, and today we're going to talk about why Kung Fu is not effective. Welcome to the Quan. Sifu Matthias here, Mind Body Warrior channel. And before we start, remember, I want you to please like, subscribe, comment, and so on. Help me to get more content out and to hopefully help everybody on their own martial arts, Kung Fu life journey. We are all on. Okay, so let's look a little bit into this. I thought this is a good topic because I can see and hear so often about people complaining that Kung Fu is not effective in certain situations. Obviously, I'm gonna blend out the question like what means effective? What means what means situation? In which situation? Streets, what does it mean? The self-defense, the streets, fighting in different divisions of combat sports, or there's many different ways, and I think people are kind of confusing a lot of things all together. So for me, going forward from here today, effective just means I can properly use what I learn, okay, in any given situation. How can this not be happening? So how can I be not effective? Well, first, especially in Kung Fu and traditional martial arts, we have always this problem. We only train forms. We don't actually practice the techniques as much and kind of wash down the information that was given us in these forms. Secondly, which goes into that, we don't update our techniques, right? Kung Fu is a historic and traditional type of martial arts, and I'm going to go later into this a little bit more, but it means certain techniques don't always work nowadays, maybe, in certain situations, okay? Secondly, I only train or only practice or only test my Kung Fu within my own type of fighting. That's a common reason too. I stay within the same school, always train with the same people, doing always the same type of sparring. That can be also pretty not damaging, but can give you a wrong certainty of feel of certainty that you are really good. But if you don't go out there and test that, how do you know, right? Thirdly, no pressure testing. This goes back to what I'm just saying, right? When we train a certain way, and then we don't actually start testing this with other styles, well, how do you know it's effective, right? So tournaments are a good way in competitions to see how can we, is it how we fight good? Obviously it's always in a different type of rule sets and all this stuff, but can this be working somewhere else? And then last but not least, which is the most obvious, is schools who, and I mentioned this with the forms, but actually really don't do sparring at all, right? Sometimes you do techniques and all these, but then you don't actually go into the sparring part, right? You have I've seen like schools that teach a lot of like applications of the form, like locks and all these things, but then they actually don't test this within themselves, within their own school, with like more pressure and like where you have to move fast and don't have time to think. So that's a really important thing to do, right? Good. So this would be the 4 reasons why your Kung Fu is not effective. You only do forms, you don't do sparring, you don't pressure test, and you stay within your own style. Okay? I'm sure there are more. Now, historically, Kung Fu was pretty effective. It has to do with like a lot of people didn't know martial arts, but also, and that's like really important to understand, and that's where I mentioned updating your fighting. Kung Fu was used in many different contexts. One was the actual wushu martial fighting war art that was used within the military, even the Shaolin Temple, which is the most famous one, and like I'm training or teaching Shaolin Kung Fu. So it comes back to a mix of having to defend the entity of the temple, which at some point was really a rich, wealthy organization who had a lot of wealth. They had a lot of land. They had a lot of different. There are several temples all around China, so they needed to protect that wealth against rebels, against thieves, and other paramilitary organizations, for example. So, and that got mixed with sometimes actually thugs trying to find shelter and ended up being or staying in one of these temples and then teaching the monks these defense styles, right? Or these fighting styles. But a lot of the martial arts, a lot of the Kung Fu was also, and a lot often taught and taught in the military. So that's why our saint, the martial arts saint for Kung Fu is Kuan Kung, which is an emperor who reunited China through force, through military. And there's a lot of real historic proof of Shaolin monks fighting for emperors, against pirates, against other like uprisings. So that's the actual application. It was used for a long time until fire weapons like firearms came and all the other stuff. That also means that for a very long time, weapon training was way more important than empty hand training. And I think that's like a really important distinction to make, right? Like at some point, as today, we are mostly fighting empty hand. Kung Fu was made for weapons and all this stuff. There was also empty hand fighting. But there's a lot of things that weren't trained as much just because it didn't make sense at the time. So that also means today we as Kung Fu practitioners have to change a little bit. We can't just keep on only doing the same. And I would even argue like most Kung Fu schools, they do weapon forms, but actually are they able to use these weapons for real, right? And that's totally okay. Like nobody is going to run around with the big swords fighting people, right? These kind of times are over. Or they're coming again, and we don't know if there's the climate apocalypse. But at the moment, it doesn't look like, okay? So we are turned into an area where either people have firearms, so normal weapon training, as it like traditional weapon training is not always helpful. It could a little bit, but like against weapons, it's really hard. You have way more like knives, and you have a lot of combat sports, right? Where again, Kung Fu wasn't made. There was competitions, and they were like made to show like who's stronger and all this stuff. But they were like always focused on at the end of it, like kind of military end of point, right? Like where to use it. That's why you have Chiu Chow, like you have like certain wrestling methods from Chinese martial arts, and within Kung Fu, like Sanda is like one end product of that, where you throw people, but that's it. Why? Because back then you would just stop because you were almost already dead. Like if you're fighting a war and everybody has weapons, you're just gonna get poked into your body with some spears, and then that's it. Or some archery, like some bows would arrows would flow at you, and so on. Right? There's like a lot of other things to think of at this time. So, but now we're in a new area where we have a lot of competition fighting and and different ways and approaches to empty hand fighting, which include, for example, the ground and grappling. And I think that's super exciting, and there's a lot of things to learn. But we always want to distinguish that and understand that, right? So, how can your Kung Fu be effective? And that's what I'm kind of wanted to point out here, because it can be, right? One way would be, first and all, that's why I tried to say all this stuff, understand where it comes from and how this can be used today. And secondly of this, be honest and clear about this with yourself and with your students or within your style, right? There's different ways to use and practice martial arts, and one is Kung Fu. There's other things in Kung Fu that are way more and better preserved than in the modern martial arts. Very often it's more here, mind and spirit, but that doesn't mean that it's all perfect. Okay, so it's also very clear, and it works every time and anywhere. Third, so first, understand where it comes from and how it can be used today. Second, be honest and clear about it. Third, do sparring all the time, and use the different methods of sparring you also have in your school. Like we have Chisao, for example, which is a very different way of fighting, but it can help so much for bridging from long to short distance and to grappling, right? So it's actually so useful, and I can see people using this now in Silat and other kind of martial arts forms, or also in Arnis, where they're trying to bring this back to work within even UFC or whatever, like combat sports, right? And then fourth but not least, which is really important, go out to tournaments and pressure test what you know and see if it can work on some other stuff. So, and third, just pressure test it and see if it can work on other stuff, right? So go to a tournament and see how it works with against modern martial arts or other types of martial arts. Okay? Yeah. And for example, we just went to a tournament with my students, and it was really great to see how they were working with people who do Muay Thai and kickboxing. And we got at least one first place, so we could beat Muay Thai and martial arts and kickboxing. So there's a way to this. It's still not easy because it's very different other type of fighting, but we have a few advantages there that can be used. Doesn't mean we are perfect. Okay, but this is good things. You can see this and you can work on this if you want to go this way and want to have your students train in other areas or in other tournaments, right? But it's also good to go to Kung Fu tournaments, do more Sanda. There's so many ways to practice that, to go a little bit harder, practice strong. But yeah, okay. I hope you like this. Let me know what you think about that. And let's keep on practicing Kung Fu and keep the tradition going. It's really important, okay? This is Sifu Matthias. Like, subscribe, sign up, comment, ring the bell or whatever this is. And see you at the Kwan. Bye.